question one of the world's foremost authorities in nuclear radiation, Midwest fuel recovery.
I said, boom, back up in this bitch. The nuclear scale. The world filled with the nuclear bomb. There wasn't one button that'll blow it all. The world is screwed, man. Indoctrinated, incorporated slaves. But you know, our people don't get it. And this shit really ain't that deep. They use fear to negate power by ways of raising war. Most of the fake wars, the people who get killed get harvested, put you on the front line, game don't change. Never listen to motherfucker. Yeah, nuclear scam, nuclear scare scam. Glenn Windsor, like I said on the previous live, before they start sending all them damn notifications, I go and ain't shit on my phone anymore, just bing, 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 binging my shit. Why the fuck are they banging my shit like that? Who, you know what I'm saying? It should just be weirdo shit, man. It should actually be weirdo shit, bro. Now, as soon as I start playing that motherfucking live, it started just binging, binging, binging. What the fuck? But you know they finna come out with some more nuclear scares and World War IIIs and World War IVs and shit. But we on some more shit. We on some goddamn virtual med. That's our shit. Yeah, we gotta goddamn play ball with these motherfuckers. Yeah, we gonna play ball with these motherfuckers. But we gonna expose this fake nuclear shit. We gonna expose this fake nuclear shit, bro. Yo, Trump, Elon. Matter of fact, I should run. What video that was, and I was running that shit talking about Trump and Elon Musk. That's right, just what I need to run right here. And showing how when I was going in there showing y'all the Manhattan Project and where Tesla came up missing at, and how Donald Trump's uncle was one of the ones that came up with the blueprints, and how the United States government seized all Tesla's documents because it was a breach of security to the World War II situation that was going on, which the World War II situation, which launched the nuclear bomb, that they ain't never launched no for them. All this shit is scare shit. And they still ruling the world with this dumb shit, bro. They still ruling the world with this dumb shit, bro. And we go to work every day to pay taxes to China and Japan and the UK on debts that can't be repaid, and deficit will only keep growing forever. Just like the book said, you're gonna be enslaved and in debt to these hoes forever. Yeah. Canaan, curse be Canaan. And he gonna be slave to Shem and Japheth forever. And the Negroes in the northwestern part of the West, the northern part of the West, gonna be usurped and being the better of the beasts of the North. And they gonna fall slaves to them. And they gonna follow Jesus and the globe and whatever psyop they allow these people to pull, because they are part of the original story of the Jew. So they let them come out with the Noah, like they are the fathers of the whole world. Everything came out Noah's dick. Redid the whole world. This whole world is a script. Trump numbers 88. 8 years later. He coming. But when you go to talk about those nuclears, let's go back where it started from, because you still supposed to be paying and talking about motherfuckers supposed to be then fucked up some people land and soil for years, and it's supposed to be contaminated and all this old bullshit behind some fake ass nukes. Now this man, Galen Windsor, is a motherfucking chemist. He's part of the building of nuclear sites all over the world, all over the United States, all over the world. Fuck all that. All over the United States of America, man. And he basically, what this man said, they use this shit to boil water and make steam, man. And if we look at that motherfucking video of the Eric Debate put out, he'll show you how they goddamn got all that TNT to go there to fake that nuclear shit, man. That was a regular goddamn bomb, man. Regular bombs. Use a motherfucking sunrise, speed it up to enhance the look of some so-called nuclear shit. And they still run this nuclear shit today. They want to war with Iran by having nuclear weapons and shit. Man, get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. Nuclear weapons. Man, we supposed to be trying to tell these motherfuckers. We want to go to war against these bitches who cook all this stuff just gonna keep enslaving us, man. You know what I'm saying? We supposed to be trying to go to war with the motherfuckers who enslaving us. We enslaved, the biggest debtor we enslaved to is Japan. And it's mighty strange. They're trying to hide the location of Japan after we look at these maps and shit. And they also distort the location of Oceania, Australia. So when they fold it down and bend it and make it look like a goddamn globe, the Far East becomes motherfucking in the South. And that's how motherfucking Australia end up allegedly put close to Africa and become Oceania. All that shit is all that shit is really the Far East, dog. And it's on the United Nations logo. Once y'all lay it down, y'all gonna see that shit, man. But as long as y'all keep believing the motherfuckers who enslaving you and in cahoots, y'all ain't gonna never see this shit, man. But this shit is plain and simple. So we gonna run this video here and let you see that the nuclear scare scam and how this man was really putting this shit in his body to show. He drinking this shit, uranium. He drinking all this shit, plutonium, and showing that this shit ain't shit. No, we gonna listen to this motherfucker. And I'll probably go to sleep on this bitch because y'all know how to do. And hopefully, my girl Cherry, Sky, and Kai gonna pop up. Because that's who fuck with me. And that's who I fuck with. Let's go.
America's Promise brings you the nuclear scare scam with Galen Windsor. Here to introduce you to
I gotta turn my motherfucking Bluetooth back on, son.
I'm pleased to have as our guest Mr. Galen Windsor from Richland, Washington. I first heard of Galen from a tape that somebody gave to me some months ago, and I found his story to be absolutely fascinating. His story is unique, to say the least. Galen has been in 77 different cities in the last 2 years lecturing on the subject of nuclear energy. The majority of his life, the last 35 years.
Energy. Tesla's energy. Like I said I don't think Tesla had a death ray. They turned that shit into some death shit to put the scare into it. Man, Tesla was about free energy. How you know that, huh? Because that hotel he became pronounced dead or killed or died in, became unalive in. From my understanding, they was running that hotel off Tesla's energy. From my understanding, the basement and the first floor of that hotel was being ran by free energy produced by Tesla. What the fuck they got to do with blowing some shit up and death rays? That's just my belief. You understand? Because his nephew was tied into Germany with Hitler. And that's why they said Hitler had that Vermonter first. That's supposed to have been space travel, but it really was goddamn broadcasting. And free energy. So they charging, they took over the power grids and it's charging us for electricity and all this shit. But all this shit should be free. Just like water, should be free. Free energy. They had to stop it. And now they putting scare on the world in 2025 with this same goddamn PSYOP about Iran can't have no nukes. Why y'all keep contracting them and having contracts with them so they can have nuclear sites? Then turn around and bomb their nuclear sites. So if you bombing nuclear sites, why they grounds and shit is not contaminated yet? You still in Iraq? You still in Iran? That's the only place you can buy, sell, trade organs, body parts legally. See, this shit psyop like a motherfucker. We gonna let the video run, man. That's right.
He spent processing plutonium from nuclear reactor sites. He has worked in the Manhattan Project.
And Tesla had nuclear reactor sites. The Tesla known today, now they trying to hide the fact that Elon Musk is off into nuclear reactors and all that shit. Now it's just supposed to be about some goddamn batteries to recharge electric cars. So Tesla and Trump, y'all the script by this nuclear shit. Because Trump, your uncle, ended up with the blueprints, some of the blueprints of Tesla. And Elon Musk, you end up being the owner, or damn near owner of Tesla. But y'all ran the script this year like y'all didn't even know each other, and then y'all was cool. Then all of a sudden, y'all went out about putting each other in the Epstein, all that script shit. But behind the scene, y'all running this nuke shit on the world. Yeah. Go ahead and expose these fools. Let's go.
Project facilities in Hanford, Washington, Oak Ridge National Laboratories and Nuclear Plant in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, General Electric's Midwest Fuel Recovery Plant in Morris, Illinois, General Electric's Fuel Fabrication Facility in San Jose, California, and Wilmington, North Carolina. And he's worked in every major reactor decommissioning project around this nation up to this present time. His major work in these projects has been the analytical process inventory control, which means that he was responsible for measuring and controlling the nuclear fuel inventory for these projects. Galen Windsor has few peers in the world in this area of expertise. And those few peers admittedly know and agree with the things that you'll be hearing on this tape. However, except for 2 or 3 of these experts, they've all chosen to remain silent for reasons which they only know. Leaving this man, then, the burden of leading this lonely battle of exposing what we call the nuclear scare scam. He's without question one of the world's foremost authorities in nuclear radiation measurement. And he's recognized by members of the Atomic Energy Commissions of all the major nations of the free world. Mr. Galen Windsor. God bless you.
Thank you, Ben. We've been considering today how best to approach this subject so that you would feel comfortable with where I am. And we thought it might be appropriate to start with how I got involved in this game. Now, in 1945, I was a Navy radioman out in the Pacific on a destroyer aimed for Japan. We had a one-way ticket. That's all you get, just one way. So, as we were becoming proficient at our business of fighting war, the Manhattan Project caught up with us and did a job. Now, the weapon that was dropped on Hiroshima, Japan in August 6, 1945 was a U-235, fully enriched U-235 weapon where the material was separated and purified in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. The one that was dropped August 9th on Nagasaki was a plutonium weapon made at Hanford. But to those of us out in the Pacific, it was quite interesting. It had a ticket on it that says, "You get to go home." I was impressed. Now, I was stuck out on Guam after the hostilities quit and was running a radio broadcast that communicated with 4,500 ships west of Pearl Harbor. Quite a few to listen to every dot and dash that I made. So I was used to having people listening to me. They couldn't see me, because they could sure hear me. I had all of the good messages that were to come to them. Fleet movements to Red Cross messages. They came along one day and says, "We'd like to have radiomen to go down to Eniwetok for the atomic bomb tests." Not me. No way. I want to go home. So they went through and they took every third radioman to go to Eniwetok. I didn't go. They let me come home. But I wanted to go home. I had a driving need within me that says, "Hey, that big firecracker, I want to know how it works. I want to know everything about how it works." So, back to the ranch in Nevada where I grew up and stacked hay all summer, gained back the 40 pounds that I'd lost out there in the islands. Into Brigham Young University the fall of '46 in chemistry classes. Dr. Joseph Nichols could make an old farm kid like me love chemistry. I hadn't had any chemistry in high school, but the way Joe Nichols taught it, I wanted to know. So chemistry it was. And some neat guys like Carl Eyring taught me physics. And along in '47, I ran across a cute blonde from Richland, Washington. Now, this girl had been telephone operator for General Leslie Groves and Dr. Enrico Fermi on the Manhattan Project. She got to put through the calls to Franklin Delano Roosevelt for these guys, so she talked personally to FDR. And she told me some of the stories like you've never heard. She says, "Oh, in those canyons, great things are done." This cowboy from Nevada couldn't even imagine what she was talking about. Well, in 1947, after we were married, I ran until she caught me. But I wasn't going to get married anyway. I wanted to get my education. I had to get on with this thing. And so we went to Richland, Washington for the first time in September of 1947. I saw that those buildings she was talking about were there. 1,000 feet long, 11 stories high, 5 of them below ground. Tremendous things. And people all over. Camp Hanford in those days was a whole army camp just there to secure that place, to provide security. Thousands of soldiers. You move around out in the desert and up out of a foxhole would pop a soldier with a gun in his hand. There wasn't any horsing around. It was all business. Back to school. In 1950, I applied for a job up there before I'd graduated, and they were in such bad need of chemists, I had a job before I had my degree. And so the last year of my chemistry, mostly English, I did on a bus, riding 25 miles to work in the morning and 25 miles back at night. And I did advanced grammar and business writing and all of those things on that bus. But in September 1950, I got into this thing called plutonium processing when we did it barehanded, without instruments, without coveralls. We had some of the most peculiar acid burns in some of the shirts. And I found one of those the other day. It's got acid burns all up the front of it. Plutonium on it, too. Amazing. That was normal operation in those days. We ran those facilities, and we ran them so well that by 1965, we had separated enough plutonium when it only existed in the parent uranium matrix to a half of a single weight percent, 0.005 weight fraction of plutonium maximum in that fuel. And we processed enough tons of uranium to recover enough plutonium by 1965 to meet the weapons needs of this country 10 times over for the foreseeable future. Now we're talking about a massive amount of work. Hands-on, do it type thing. And there was a couple thousand of us, and we were just happy as could be, just working like mad, making those plants run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in a community that ran on shift work, ABCD shift. The whole community that way. A wartime community, people dedicated to doing a job, and we were doing it, and we did it well. No pretense. Oh, yes, there were. Out in the reactor began to sneak in people who wanted a radiation monitor behind every reactor operator. Why? We know how to make these things run. When we got a metal fuel element stuck and it fell down on the trampoline back of the reactor, we'd go in with our feet and kick it off into the pool, smoking, burning. If you didn't have an instrument, you didn't know it was too hot, so you just went in and kicked it. Finally, along came a rule maker that says, thou shalt not do that. You'll get burned. Oh? I didn't get burned when I did it last week. But you exceeded the limit. Well, where did this limit come from? Turns out that in 1934, the International Commission on Radiation Protection fabricated a limit for X-rays. It was no longer permissible to be burned by them, erythema, reddening of the skin. You now had to keep a limit called 210.
So all of a sudden, they come from shit that you can't kick this shit out, you'll get burned. Niggas, I kicked that shit last week and ain't do shit. But now all of a sudden I get burnt by this shit. Huh? Fake nuclear weapons exposed. We, the United States, American citizens, declare war on Japan. Tired of paying taxes to you motherfuckers that owe these hoes $1 trillion. Fuck out of here.
Of an hour per day. How much is that? Well, you've got to have one of these Beckman instruments to read it, and you have to keep time of exposure. You know, there are 4 requirements on this thing: the size of the source, therefore the strength of the source, the distance from the source, the time of exposure, and the intervening shielding to keep from getting burned. Oh, fine. We've been doing this thing for years now, and we've never been burned. Why have we got these rules? And they says, yours is not to ask questions, yours is to do and die. Don't you ask questions.
Jared, I'm live on 3GD. They ain't sending a notification out. So I went live on 5, because I know you would have been in there. Yeah, I went live on 3GD early, and they just went to notify my phone, notification. So I guess they don't want me talking about these nukes. You did. This fake ass shit that this man exposing. The nuclear scare scam. Huh? And this the shit that got the world in fear right now. And they let Japan run the world because they dropped a fake ass nuke over there. We discussed this shit. Let's continue to expose this shit. Yo, I'm gonna do that shit. I sleep on this shit tonight. 5:25 in the morning, Cherry. Yeah, Sky. Y'all pop up. Either chat'll be fine.
If you do, you might disappear. Those who broke the rules didn't appear the next day. Military rule? Oh yes, absolute. What was your appeal? And people you were working with one day, when they weren't there the next day, you didn't go inquire why.
But if you want to see him speak, I got him speaking over here on 3GD. I'm live on both of these bitches.
You were just grateful you still had your work to do, and you kept right on doing it. Now this is in the United States of America. Well, in 1960, we found out that the materials that we were working with, the thing that we called high-level waste, that if you waited 3 years, these million-gallon tanks that high-level waste went into boiled off 15,000 gallons of water a day. Fairly hot? Oh, yes. This material that if it ever broke a line would seal itself off in the ground within a foot, make its own glass. It wasn't going to go anyplace. We did that a time or two, accidentally, of course. And so we started packaging this cesium-137 in casks and railroad cars like that and shipping it to Oak Ridge, Tennessee. And they'd take it out and make it into a barium titanate and press it into a pellet. And those things were so hot that they actually glowed in the dark from the infrared heat. Now, thermal-ionic conversions came along at this time. So you hooked these little heat sources up to thermionic converters and you took electricity out this side. No moving parts. These things went into the SNAP program. And these early SNAP power generators are what powered the underwater transmitters for our nuclear navy. We've got a regular road map under the sea. All you got to do is have an instrument that knows how to find it, and then you've got eyes on a submarine. You didn't know that, did you? The power from it came from this material that they now call waste. We processed that stuff and packaged it outside at Hanford. Well, we had rules that said 3R per year is your allowable exposure, that amount of gamma energy that will expose a film pack. But that was for the people that didn't know. We weren't about to follow those rules. We just went ahead and did the job.
See the video.
They sent around.
If you want to see Mr. Windsor speak, we live on 3GD. Because he's subject to drink some of this shit right in front of your eyes. Because all this shit fake. Like I've been telling y'all for a long time. This world is a script. And I'm tired of goddamn being enslaved. So I can't do nothing about it but expose it. You know what I'm gonna do? As I go, I'm gonna expose this shit in my sleep like I've been doing since I've been on this bitch.
An investigation slip that says your dosimeter was overexposed 2 weeks ago. What did you do? And they had a cute little form on it that says accidentally exposed to light, and that was the one I always used to check. Because it's the same amount of light. You know, if you get gamma through the film pack, it's the same amount of light as you get when you click the lens on a camera. They wanted to limit us to that. And one day we looked up and they had. They had limited us to that amount of exposure. Then the fun part of the game begins. You say, who limited us to that? Are they powerful? Yeah, they control the purse strings. They live by the golden rule.
The bankers.
Them that's got the gold makes the rules.
The bankers.
If you like your work, you keep the rules. If you don't keep the rules, you disappear. Sure enough, some of us disappeared. Some of my friends gone. Where'd they go? I don't know. Well, 2 years ago, I started traveling for American Opinion Speakers Bureau, and one of the documents.
Hey, somebody type in the chat over there on Fed 5 that we live. I do. We live on Fed 3GD because I want to see this man talk. I want to see his face.
That they had was Major Jordan's diary. A story of shipping the technology and the material that was developed at Hanford in 1944 directly to Russia on U.S. Air Force planes out through Great Falls, Montana, Fairbanks, Alaska, under the auspices of one Harry Hopkins, and with the at least tacit approval of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Now what are you going to do? That thing that we had been doing and feeling so good about had been shared at no expense with Russia. You go back and you check the record and you find Russia did not develop their own nuclear atomic weapon until 1949, even when we supplied them the material and the knowledge. 4 years after we touched them off at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We weren't happy with that. We were just happy doing our job. Well, in 1965, General Electric was ready to leave Hanford. I'd worked for General Electric for that 15 years, and they took me out to California, San Jose, and we had in mind to design and build this nuclear fuel reprocessing plant at Morris, Illinois. They told me they were going to build it at San Luis Obispo. That's how they got me away from Hanford. But that was just to get me away from Hanford. I got to design the sampling analytical system for this plant. The sample cell was the hydraulic heart of this place. I got to dictate where they put the columns, how high the columns were in relation to my sample cell. One man standing in front of a lead glass window could sample any liquid stream in that whole plant. It took crews of men at Hanford to do the same thing. I wasn't happy with that, so I built an efficient system. I got to design that. I got to build it. Conceptual design, detailed design, build it, operationally test it. And in 1973, they says, forget it, friends, you don't get to run it. We had 170 tons, metric tons of spent fuel stored in the basin. And the then President of the United States, do you remember who it was? Jerry Ford. Says, friends, no way, you don't get to run it. That's when I started to kick over the traces. Up to that point of time, I thoroughly enjoyed my work. I had no limitations, practical limitations. I had all the money to spend. I was in charge of the design effort. I built it the way that I wanted to because it was technically correct. All I had to do was check with engineers and make sure that it was right. And all of a sudden I was told, you must reduce your limits of exposure by a factor of 10. I says, I won't do it. First thing you know, you got the word that says, oh, yes, you will. I says, no way. Well, that's when the rebel, Galen Windsor, started to show up. And when I found out that by management conference I couldn't get to these guys, I figured out another way. Now, in this plant is a beautiful pool. It's got a place to store spent fuel bundles till it won't stop. 660,000 gallons of water, demineralized, just as clear and pretty as it can be. Heated to 100 degrees Fahrenheit when the outside temperatures are -20, wind chill factors down to -60. And I found out that I could swim in that rascal.
What?
You turn off the lights at night and it had a light blue Cherenkov effect.
What?
And this kid from Nevada that never could pass up a warm swimming hole used to go swimming in that pool. There wasn't anybody that had the nerve to swim with me, but since I was manager of safety and analytical services of this plant, it was mine to use. Oh boy. I found out that I could...
This motherfucker swimming in nuclear... This nigga's swimming in nuclear waste. And uranium and plutonium and shit. This bomb that's supposed to be able to blow up the world. The one button that they can push and fuck everything up. This shit that's supposed to fuck Japan up with its mislocated ass. Yeah, when they bent this bitch, they bent this bitch. This how Australia became part of the motherfucking southern hemisphere. That shit sits in the far east. Well, we on their ass in a major way. And we live on 3GD if you want to see this man's face. So over here, we don't play. Yeah, I need no views. Cause all my views, these people are the motherfucking truth. I be tripping my people. I said, man, I gotta go anywhere around this bitch and look a motherfucker eye to eye. Get on the phone with any of my family members, anybody, and ask them, nigga, when have you known me to tell a lie to a motherfucker? And every last one of them gonna say the same thing. So I pat myself on the back cause they can't fuck with that. I was bone trill. So nigga, I'm stuck with that. I know it's real. Call my sister from prison when you know your brother like nothing. Call when you know. Shit, no, cause I can't think of no. And that was every day nigga I got there and get in front of on motherfucker say not knowingly lie to no motherfucker. And if I lie, I'ma come straighten it up. If I find out that I told the untruth. Yo, that's the difference between me and you. These fake ass YouTubers around still acting like they don't understand English when I'm just putting out facts. Even within the conspiracy, I bring out the facts. This shit here fresh, this shit here off the top though. Cause I already know this shit gonna lead to the goddamn truth. All this indoctrinated shit we up in, all this walking corporations, bro. They get money off your back like a motherfucker. We live on Unfed 3GD, exposing the motherfucking nuclear PSYOP, the scare scam. Huh? The scare scam. Yeah, I need no views. Just the motherfucking few that fuck with the truth. Whether it made me look good or bad, I got to ride with what the fuck the truth is. And that would set me free. I'm free of this shit. But I'm finna go play ball with these hoes. Cause I'm 55 and I'm ready to slide and glide in some real nice shit. I've been anti-government, my soul been anti-government since I've been in this motherfucking world, bro. I don't play.
Do that. I showed some financial types one time that I could stir that pool with my bare hand.
Yep.
And check out through the same radiation monitors they did without triggering it. GE didn't like it. I got a letter from him that says, thou shalt not tell financial types that you can swim in the pool, that you can stir it with your hand, because if they find that out, they will steal.
That boy said G. No, GTE. We live on Unfed 3GD, Yvonne. They ain't send no notifications out. I think that's Yvonne. That's Yvonne. Yeah. We over on 3GD. We gonna run this shit. I'm gonna wake up and run this man videos all goddamn night. So I gotta go work at 5:25 in the morning. And I'm still gonna make time to put the truth out here in the world. That's what they call balance. Yeah. I gotta combat the bullshit in this world. That's what I devoured myself to do. Yeah, looking in that goddamn. Y'all know my story. Ain't gonna never change. I said, bam, let's get it.
The inventory. They will know that the inventory can be stolen. Oh, is that a valuable inventory? This same material that's labeled high-level waste by our current government, our current Congress. Now, plutonium is an interesting chemical element. It is created in a nuclear reactor. The Manhattan Project built 8 of these reactors at Hanford. The first one took 12 months from sagebrush.
Reactors that Elon Musk trying to deny claims and rights to, like they don't fuck with them no more. What you did with your reactors? What you did with our Tesla reactors? We done jumped into some more shit. Boy, we so deep down in the rabbit hole over this bitch. Boy, I sure wish I had some of my old choppers to go down this rabbit hole with me. I can name 2 or 3 of my wishes. Cause I don't stop. I ain't gonna stop. Can't stop. Won't stop. Exposing truth about this weak ass, fake ass global world. This global world is created for the masses. And the fear in this bitch is this fuck ass nuke shit. They got us in debt. that we gonna forever, I'm talking about forever be in sin, in debt, in this bullshit. And they just playing with a motherfucker, imposing fear upon the motherfucking masses of people. Like they protecting us from shit. Get the fuck out of here.
To nuclear steam to build, and it had never been done in that size before. How could they do that? Why did they do it? To create this element called plutonium. Plutonium has been assessed as being the most hazardous material on Earth. Now, from the standpoint that you can make an atomic weapon out of it, yes, it is quite hazardous, because a piece of it that big, 2.5 kilograms, that's only 5 pounds, is the force that delivered 20,000 tons of TNT equivalent over Nagasaki. Indeed, it is hazardous. The one over Hiroshima that had fully enriched U-235 in it was 5 times as big. So plutonium is more dangerous than U-235, is it not? By a factor of 5. It takes 5 times as much U-235 as it does plutonium. Therefore, it is the most hazardous thing. Enter the great pretenders. They said that 5 grams of plutonium, properly distributed over the face of the Earth, would kill everybody on Earth. Now, if you can only get one 20 kiloton weapon to go on 2,500 grams, how's 5 grams going to kill everybody on Earth? Early on, I had a fear that said, if there is this much fissile material, that can undergo a chain reaction, we called it in the beginning, then if you set a match to it, all the fissile material in the world is just going to keep right on going. Totally unfounded fear. It turns out that when you're in this business of recovering plutonium, like we recovered so much of it at Hanford, we found out.
This shit just reminded me when I was in that backyard, goddamn, about 2.5 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, when I was talking about that motherfucker, when I was talking about that goddamn compass pointing to the sun. What really has that goddamn compass pointing to the sun? Where have they really came into agreement on to not share with the world? In this created so-called North Pole that they pull to the top of a ball that actually sits in the center of the Earth. What's point? What? And I said, and I went in there and said, it's plutonium, electromagnetic. And I used to always wonder, why did they get rid of the planet Pluto? And what is rid of plutocracy? So these motherfuckers is dumb as fuck when you get a hold to their tail. All this shit gonna fall right in line. Just keep fucking on. I'm gonna wake y'all up to a whole lot of this bullshit.
That if you have it in a solution where it's less than 5% plutonium, it won't go critical any way that you kick it. And when you get it to 100% plutonium, you better be careful. Because if you put it in more than a 5-inch diameter cylinder, you're playing with fire. You can undergo what is known as an uncontrolled criticality, accidental criticality. The air turns blue. If the cylinder is sealed, it will explode from steam pressure. And the steam pressure builds up in a millisecond, which is about that long. No, you don't horse with it. And then you find out that those 8-foot thick shielding walls on those canyons were put there because they didn't know how much was a critical mass. They says, if we make a mistake, we don't want to die, so we will provide the shielding. And so this shielding thing started for no other reason than they didn't know what was a critical mass. Well, through the years, we got pretty good at telling what a critical mass was. And I have worked in a plant where I had half a critical mass in this hand, barehanded, dressed in street clothes, half in this hand, wearing a lab coat, and I'd put this half in a pocket on this side and this half in a pocket on this side and walk down the hall. If those two ever got together, there would be a blue flash. They never got together because I was in between them. And we do that every day. And each half had to meet definite dimension characteristics. And so we'd take them down and pass them one half at a time, and they'd measure it and say, yeah, that one will pass. And then we'd pass them the other half, and that one will pass too. But they were carefully put in separate bird cages so they couldn't get together accidentally. Well, those of us who worked with it enjoyed it. We knew what we were doing. We worked at it. When the President of the United States decided not to operate that fuel reprocessing plant, I started scrambling to find out what was going on. Many things had been done in the name of health and safety. Don't get burned. You got to have a safety record. You have to be safer than anybody else. We were already safer than anybody in the whole world. Well, you can't afford to get burned with this. You've got to enforce the limits. You've got to keep it. And I says, hey, that's not what the ball game is at all. I'll bet you the ball game is something else. And in 1982, when the Congress passed the Nuclear Waste Policy Act of 1982, a guy by the name of Mo Udall, I don't know whether you people in Arizona have ever heard of him or not, authored that bill. It's called the High-Level Waste Disposal Act of 1982. The material he called waste is the reusable uranium fuel that I had been working on for 32 years. Needless to say, Mo Udall and I do not agree on whether that material is waste or not. The name of the game then is, who owns the plutonium and how much is it worth? The government says bury it 3,000 feet deep in basalt, and we'll hold a contest among the states to see who gets to bury it. Oh? Why do you want to bury it? Did you ask the owners? Who is the owner of the plutonium? May I submit that it's most likely the nuclear power ratepayer. He is paid for the mining, the fabrication of the parent uranium, power generation, and is being charged in advance for its burial. If you're paying for it, to whom does it belong? How much is it worth? In inflated dollars, a ton of reusable uranium fuel contains useful metal isotopes worth upwards of $10 million a ton. Mo Udall says it's high-level waste. The value of reusable uranium fuel scheduled for permanent disposal probably exceeds the national debt. Naturally occurring plutonium quantities, and you know plutonium does occur naturally. Plutonium-244 is found at the residual activities of the several, 8 at least, Oklo phenomenon reactors across the world. First one found at Gabon, Africa. Naturally occurring plutonium quantities have been enhanced by transmutation of uranium. That's the reason we built reactors in the first place. Our ability to detect and measure emissions from these elements is useful in inventory control. When fissile elements, fissile isotopes, are present at less than 5 weight percent, plutonium-239 equivalent And the heavy metal oxide matrix is stored dry in air. It has no critical mass. Remember we talked about shielding was because they didn't know what a critical mass was? If it is light water reactor fuel at less than 5% equivalent fissile content, you can handle it, you can do anything you want with it, you can stack it up, you can have a room full, you can have a handful. As long as you keep it dry, it will not sustain a chain reaction. What then is all this falderall about a little bit, 5 grams will kill everybody in the world? They don't know what they're talking about. And when they say that, they're thumbing their...
This y'all atomic bomb we talking about now. This the atomic bomb, the one button that's gonna blow up the world, and Iran can't have nukes because they'll kill everybody, and we gotta stop Iran from having nukes, and we gonna have a World War III, a nuclear war, and we fucked Japan up, and we got them fucked their soil up, and they're gonna have birth defects for years and years and years. This shit you talking about now?
Nose at measurement experts like Galen Windsor. I am insulted when they say those things and get away with it, because it has no bearing on the truth. It cannot be mishandled. It will not expose any person to an unshielded nuclear reaction. In other words, no controls are necessary except to prevent the pilferage of the inventory. Have you got that one? Let it register. Do you need governmental rules and regulations and instructions? No way. Then why do we have all of those rules? Inventory control practices capitalized on the fear of undereducated masses who work in the industry. I didn't say anything about ordinary people now. I'm talking about the people who have worked in the industry and those who cast stones from without. The Ralph Naders, the Jane Fondas,
The Hollywood.
Now, it doesn't take you much thinking to find out that maybe the industry is the source of the problem. The industry is the one that made up the committees that made the rules that the Congress enforced. You ever thought of it that way? The strangest kind of feather bedding that's ever been dreamed up, it makes the railroad engineers look like pikers. The only amounts of fissile process materials that are of health concern to the handlers are those that can accidentally cause an unshielded nuclear chain reaction.
Walking around with all them goddamn hazmat uniforms on, face all covered up, like some danger going on. Don't they put you in the mind of that goddamn CDC man out there when they said they had some kind of outbreak and shit, and them people out there with them hazardous uniforms on, be standing out there with no gloves on, no mask on. Yeah, the nigga who run the CDC, they're out there picking up motherfuckers. They're still moving the body bags and running this script like some hazardous shit out there, and they can't touch the bodies and shit. But he out there with no mask and then on. They walk around goddamn covered up from head to goddamn toe.
Or that will cause erythema from the shortest wavelength, highest frequency, and therefore the most easily shielded ultraviolet light emissions of the electromagnetic spectrum. Big words. Let's see what they mean. The emissions from uranium, plutonium, cesium, all of those things are only important if you assemble an amount that if you get this amount and this amount together, it can go critical. You can get a blue flash. and therefore get burned. And that's happened 34 times in the business, and 8 men have died as a result of that. Accidental criticality. Documented in Los Alamos document 3611, if you want to check the source.
3611, look it up.
Or if you've got enough of it together that it's giving off ultraviolet light of this particular wavelength and frequency without any intervening shielding, enough to burn you, sunburn you, erythema, reddening of the skin. If it's less than that, if the effect is less than that, then what is the problem? Excessive government regulation. That's what's the problem. Tritium. Heavy water. Deuterium is hydrogen 2. Tritium is hydrogen 3. If you let an inventory get away from you, what's going to happen to it out in the biosphere? Nothing other than it will become diluted and join the naturally occurring inventory of tritium, because tritium is created in the upper atmosphere by sunlight. We have a natural inventory of tritium. Then the only thing that happens when you release tritium...
Boy, they just proved goddamn melanation 3GB1. The one source, the sun. One word motto. One word, the source. The sun. Went right back to that sun. All energy. The sun is the source. The sun is the God, nigga.
Which is the trigger mechanism for bombs. It's the source of the push that makes it go.
So what?
Is that you lost a valuable inventory.
So what?
Then what of these people that are pretending that a little bit of tritium is going to do you in? It is not so. What are those 2 points? Only if it is an economically recoverable concentration, or if it has a natural reconcentration mechanism. You know, there isn't any one of the radioisotopes out there that has a meaningful level of reconcentration in any of the species, not even the oysters in the bays in Maryland, below Calvert Cliffs. Why then are we still playing this game that any amount of this material is of hazard? Reusable uranium fuel, which has been isotopically enhanced in power-producing reactors, is a valuable national resource, not a high-level waste. The utility operators recognize the future worth of this commodity. Mo Udall, in that Nuclear Waste Policy Act of 1982, imposed a tribute of $1 mil per kilowatt hour.
They want to keep it all for themselves to charge you for energy. I ain't got to listen to all this shit. Because I know how my brain functions. I can read 3-4 pages of a book and tell you what the fuck going on with it, how it's going to end. I ain't up in no dummy. Chelsea was finna give free energy. And they turned it into a skill. They turned it into something scary. It opened up all these power plants and charge your ass for electricity. Chelsea was finna get a world free energy. Everybody understand that fact, right? So how it turned into this death ray shit. That hotel that man was in Manhattan, they talking about the Manhattan Project. The Manhattan Project, the one who goddamn made the nuclear goddamn atomic bomb that they dropped on Japan. And they got the blueprint from Tesla because they would have leaked the source. They were full of shit. That's why they had to stop Hitler, man. Hitler was trying to kill fake ass Jews. Hitler wasn't killing no niggers. Nigga. Hitler was killing Jews, fake ass motherfuckers. Secret Society, Illuminati ass, fake ass, Bible writing ass, Hitler was killing Jews. And Tesla's nephew was tied into Hitler. We just read that shit now. This freestyle. They gonna change this shit up. Every time on FEDZBACK with something, they gonna change it up. They've been doing this since I've been on this bitch. They gonna change it up. I just had to prove to y'all, them folks still sitting there at 5,600 harvesting organs right there. I just got them to prove this shit to y'all, man. They been watching shit that I bring on this motherfucker, even them ears with that clone shit. That was when I started showing people the ears. Cause I wanna make my visuals match my audio. These people are goddamn selling motherfucking energy. All energy is solar energy. If the source of energy is the sun, all of it got to come. Gonna go right back to what it's supposed to be. All this was to stop the world from getting free energy so they can charge the motherfucker for energy. And at the same time, never let a child go to waste. Ain't that what Rahm Emanuel said? Hit their ass from all angles. Keep that fear on their ass. Man, we want to go to war with Japan, man. I want to see how that nuke work. Why ain't no crater in the earth over there? What a hot spot where that bitch hit at? What are the deformities of the children that supposed to be deformed from the bomb dropping on them? How the grass grow right back up in the motherfucker? What the fuck they talking about? All this shit to sell the world energy by the people who call themselves on the world, these bankers. Nigga, I'm Pluto. The Nazca plate belonged to Melanation 3GD, and now Pluto is back. I ate it, I'm burping it back up. Bitch, we Pluto. Fuck Disney, I'm Pluto, bitch. I'm Pluto, bitch. I'm the Nazca plate. I want my dope back, and I want all the motherfucking plutonium and uranium back. And the oil fields, motherfucker. All this fake ass shit. Man, 3GD for life, man. I don't even wake my people up. But they gone on and live their lives and go on and be successful in what the fuck they doing and ignore this dumbass word and raise their children with some common sense. Not education, with some common sense. Real shit. All this shit. Man, that whole fucking hotel that man got found dead in. We gonna go look some of this shit up, cause it's gonna be on my mind. Y'all know how I do it, so get on my mind. To my recollections, man, the basement and the first floor of that hotel was being ran by Tesla Technology. And they ran that hotel for years off free energy. That's what that man was doing. He wasn't trying to invent no motherfucking death ray to kill no motherfucker. So where did death ray shit come out of? The only way you gonna see the death ray is on these cartoon ass movies that they bring to reality. Like that fake ass space shit. That started with Walt Disney and Von Braun, and they brought that shit into this global reality that don't exist. The man was showing us how we can have free energy, how we can share this shit and be peaceful on Earth. Peace on Earth. How you gonna have peace on Earth when you worshiping these old with this God of war creating all this chaos and fear and all this bullshit? Fear is what conquers love, my nigga. I might talk a lot of shit, my nigga. My soul full of love, my nigga. That's why I love truth. These bitches ain't talking about Nathan, man.
$1 per megawatt hour on all electricity produced in a nuclear plant so that they can research and develop methods to throw it away.
And then guess what they do with it? Guess what I bet you they do with it, my nigga. Guess what I bet you they do with it, dude. Guess what I bet you they do with it? The same thing they do with the other waste. Use it to try to block and distort the UV rays of the sun. The same thing they do with that plasma. When you go down and talk about you donating blood, you ain't donating no blood. You giving them your plasma. Water and plasma are two of the greatest conductors of energy. You dig what I'm saying? And these people can't stand that sun. But they want that melanin so bad. What power do you think the motherfucking beast, the East, gave to the beast? Daniel prophesied it, not me. He said the goddamn dragon, who the dragon is. Ain't that the motherfucking Chinese motherfucker that got the dragon and chasing the tail? Ain't that the Draco constellation? Ain't that the Chinese that got the dragon and they parades and shit? The dragon. The Draco constellation. This white man ain't old enough to have no knowledge on what the fuck the goddamn Draco constellation is. Bitch, you ain't been here long enough. The Draco constellation don't come back to every 7,000 years. Bitch, you ain't been in power. I had a motherfucking knowledge of this shit long enough to know nothing about a Draco constellation. No, you a Draco. Draco, blood, Dracula. That's what the fuck you are, bitch. You don't know nothing about no motherfucking constellations, nigga. And you bury the true source of it. That's the Olmec calendar, nigga. The greatest calendar ever goddamn we've known upon this earth to goddamn study astrology and astronomy up in them goddamn stars, nigga. But they can't stand the sun. So that's where them chemtrails come from. Am I right? That's where them chemtrails come from. They put that shit, them chemtrails, out there to distort our frequencies. We used to be on 1528. They slowly lowering our frequencies and downplaying our chakras to interact and receive information from that life source, the God's Son, my nigga. And I bet you they spraying that shit in the atmosphere also to distort and play. Mars is the motherfucker. Mars gonna war with the sun. Who the fuck Mars gonna war with? Look up the word Mars in Latin and see what the fuck they really talking about. Remus and Romulus' daddy, the one that Rome is named after. Rome was named after a motherfucking character named Romulus. Those twins that suck on wolf titties. The moon howlers. That's how Rome was named. And their father's name was Mars. Look up the word Mars, see, don't it mean to take away from the perfection of, to fuck up perfection. The perfect light of the world is the sun. And they trying to fuck up perfection. That's what Mars mean. Boss Illuminati talk. I don't play with y'all. They probably spraying this same shit up out the motherfucking airplanes to get rid of that fucking waste. Nuclear, fake ass waste. All to stop themselves from that melanoma, from that melanated motherfucking sun piss, which you should be calling sun god.
Why do the utilities willingly pay this amount to the Secretary of Energy to limit their liability exposure? Who pays that amount anyway? The consumer.
Fucking up my vitamin D, bitch.
Of nuclear generated power. You have no choice, and therefore I call it a tribute. At the same time, they have provided their own storage basins at these reactors at ratepayers' expense to retain ownership control of the plutonium resource. So you consumer, you ratepayer, you taxpayer, are paying for the storage of this fuel, and WNP2 at Hanford has storage that will take them through the turn of the century, and yet every day they are paying a tribute to the Secretary of Energy with the concurrence of the United States Congress and signed by the President of the United States in 1982, 83. Who was that? Ronald Reagan. They have provided those storage basins at ratepayer expense to retain ownership control of the plutonium resource. I started playing a game one day, 7 years ago. I says, okay, Portland General Electric, you've got the Trojan reactor, you've got a storage basin problem, I'm going to make you an offer. I made them an offer that says, I will take all of your spent fuel, FOB your basin, if you will give it to me. In other words, I will take it off your hands at no expense to you. I will ship it, I will store it, I will do everything that needs to be done to that fuel. And you know what they told me? Can I quote them?
Yes, sir.
Go to hell, Galen Windsor. We value it more valuable than platinum or gold. We're going to play the plutonium futures ourselves. Now, where did I learn that the name of the game is who owns the plutonium and how much is it worth? The first plutonium I saw was in a glass tube.
Boy, I do not motherfucking play. What the fuck made me goddamn go that day and said plutonium? Why did they get rid of the planet Pluto? What really makes that motherfucking compass point toward that center? They got a ring of plutonium right there in that bitch. That was that black rock. I'm trying to tell y'all some real shit. And I bet you I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna put my thumb on it. You know I don't stop. Cause it's common sense what's going on. Now I had a hunch in that backyard. I said, man, what the fuck really make that compass point toward it? They got some plutonium, uranium, or that motherfucker. And that's when I started going. Y'all was right there with me. The ones that come in, the bitch fuck me every day. My 1, 2 folk fuck me though. They know this shit come up in my head, will come up, come out. And I said right there in that backyard and started looking up. Was that shit electromagnetic? Was it electromagnetic? And I had to go through so much shit for them to tell me. Just like I had to go through so much shit to find out that water was a great conductor of energy. They try to hide out the article I'm reading. I got to get all the way down to the goddamn 3rd or 4th paragraph to listen to them tell me the shit they was trying to hide in the first 5 paragraphs. Why you couldn't just start the goddamn article out and tell me what I want to hear? That water is a great conductor of energy. Plasma is a great conductor of energy. And they doing all this shit. Why the fuck? What the fuck China need with its own artificial sun? Japan got a blood sun on their motherfucker. They don't want no sun. The sun don't even go out far east. True East sit right up this, in Melanation 3GD. True East start right up over Mount Sinai, coming up over Egypt, coming across that bitch to the west or South America, and come back around towards goddamn Antarctica and keep looping, doing the same thing. Some of the stars are fixated and some move, some warp on themselves. Those are fixated lights in the sky, in the heavens. And I be so glad when my nigga said it, stop disrespecting Gab. I ain't gonna disrespect Nut, and don't you disrespect Gab. Gab represents the motherfucking earth, and Nut represents the heavens. And ain't no motherfucking ancient Egyptian never said nothing about us living on a goddamn ball of water, said it. So stop disrespecting Gab, dog. Nut and Gab, I learned this shit from you, nigga. I learned this shit from you, nigga, and I hope somebody share my shit to that nigga, man. Disrespecting the earth, making the water ball like the land, goddamn laying on the side of some water when you know the water come down upon the earth and rises up in levels, man. That motherfucking compass point towards this motherfucking energy. And it's electromagnetic. And they use this waste that fuck with the UV rays of this melanated sun disk. And they made one mistake when they was talking about heavens. They said we gonna return to the heavens from which we came. Our energy, my nigga. They playing with the true information. And I see these bitches.
On the newsreel, when I got back from the Pacific in 1946, and that they had in a glass test tube, they said was worth $500,000. Certainly they had less than 5 grams of plutonium in that tube. That's pretty expensive stuff. And so for the show, they put a pot underneath it in case they dropped it. They said, we don't want to have to pick it up out of the rug. When it was decided for us not to operate this plant, plutonium was guaranteed on buyback by the federal government at $43 a gram. That's quite a price drop, don't you think? When that price...
That's nice, but last time I checked, melanin was goddamn $360-something a goddamn gram. Last time I checked, it's probably more now. What melanin is worth today? It was worth $360-something a gram last time I checked. Man, I go in this motherfucker and ask them bitches to have melanin taste. And these bitches can tell me, I'm telling you, the salt and pepper. These bitches been cannibals. And they don't give a fuck about the South or the West, African or goddamn American. I'm trying to tell y'all what's going on with these folks, man. These folks are scientifically, virtually trying to whoop us. But guess what we got, y'all? See, D don't know nothing about this shit. We got us a motherfucking plan. And we finna make us a motherfucking virtual. We gonna trademark some virtual shit. It's gonna be goddamn virtual meds. Yeah, they kill you from goddamn radiation. We gonna cure your ass from radiation exposure. So I can think like an evil scientist too, cause they ain't talking about shit. And we gonna patent this shit. And we gonna put some tools and cues and formulas and put this shit together like it's a real formula there. But we gonna give a cure to radiation exposure virtually through the motherfucking internet with a goddamn thumbprint. Y'all think, see, that's how my mind think. But I put that shit out there like that, and some motherfucker gonna come and goddamn and see. And guess what? In this world, that shit'll work. That's how fucked up our people is, bro. But I don't like to play with people. These niggas gonna make me cash in on their ass. Cause all these niggas that cashed in and I have showing their little money and all that old bullshit. Lying and shit, clickbaiting and shit. Everything was telling the goddamn truth. Yeah, we got virtual meds, nigga. It's gonna stop goddamn radiation exposure. It's gonna cure that shit. We gonna send goddamn radiated motherfucking plutonium straight through the motherfucking internet, through a motherfucking thumbprint. Yeah, I'm raw like that. I'm scientifically the motherfucker. Yo, Charity, Damon Hill, Kai, Sky. I'm gonna get some money. I'm gonna patent the idea. Yo, somebody y'all remind me. Yo, we need to do that. We need to do that. We need to put some money in our pocket off this dumb shit. You mean to tell me you got the cure for goddamn radiation exposure? Motherfuckers going over there getting radiated trying to cure cancer and shit. Going over there letting them all slowly kill your motherfucking ass like they trying to kill you. Bitches kill my grandma with that fake ass shit. Chemo. Virtual meds. I'm starting to get evil, man. This shit sounding good to a nigga, man.
Guarantee went away in October of 1971. The price of plutonium became $10 a gram. It steadily went down to where its present worth on the market is a minus $2 a gram per year. That's what it costs you to hold on to a plutonium inventory on a material that has been declared worthless by the utility owners. and rubber stamped by the Congress of the United States, and they're spending billions of dollars digging a hole in ordinary rock so that they can throw it away, dispose of it. Okay, what are you going to do with it? Reusable uranium fuel may be properly stored in air-cooled, dry storage in a cost-effective manner. NUCULEAR in Germany offers this immediate and long-term option as a necessary and safe step prior to reprocessing. They're doing it in Europe. At least 4 regionally located facilities are available in the United States where this concept can be used right now. Barnwell Nuclear.
Kevin J, we over on 3GD, man. They ain't seen out no notification, so I can't lie to that. Everybody know over here that we over on. Yeah, it's just the fam in that bitch. It's just the fam over in that bitch. We over here on 3GD. We gonna run this nuclear shit all goddamn night. Every time we're gonna find another one of these videos. And let this man goddamn soothe our soul from the fearful shit about our atomic bomb that ain't gonna kill shit.
Fuel plant in South Carolina. Midwest Fuel Recovery Plant in Morris, Illinois. This one. Nuclear Fuel Services in upstate New York, and Redox Processing Plant at Hanford, Washington. These fully shielded, already radioactively contaminated storage areas.
Go over the unfair 3GD for life on Kevin J. Oh, you can see it right there, but I got the video playing, the visual up over here on this side, over on 3GD for life.
Have secure, limited access. All have been operated under processing conditions of 10 CFR 50, and the MFRP has a 10 CFR 70 storage license, the only licensed storage facility away from a reactor in the United States. It singly, all by itself, is capable of storing all of the reusable uranium fuel that needs to be moved away from power reactors for the remainder of this century. We had that storage designed in 1975. Had the approval of the design. Why then are you spending money over here in New Mexico on the waste isolation project? Why are you spending money at Hanford at the basalt waste isolation project? Why are you spending money at Beatty, Nevada for storage when I can already store it in this building that's already built? I just named you 3 others that can do the job all by themselves too. And I know where there's 14 more buildings that can do it. What are we going to do? Redox and other excess facilities at Hanford are capable of dry storing all commercial REF until plutonium recycle, at least through 5% enrichment, is reestablished, or until the 22nd century, whichever comes first. RUF can be cost-effectively stored in existing facilities. Where does Mo Udall came off then, saying that you cannot use this plant for its intended purpose unless it is owned by the United States government. He has said that. The waste isolation projects are politically mandated wasting of national energy and construction resources. Plutonium proliferation by diversion of stored reusable uranium fuel is of minor importance compared to global availability of fully enriched uranium by laser isotopic separation. Let me explain that last thing that I said. Jimmy Carter said you can't ship plutonium to India, but in the same paragraph said you may ship them fully enriched uranium. Oh, Jimmy Carter, that peanut brain, what did he just say? He says that when the Israelis took out the reactor in Iraq, they had fully enriched uranium from France, and they says those rascals, those Iraqis, are going to take that fully enriched uranium, put it in that reactor, irradiate it to plutonium, and therefore have to recover the plutonium in a plant like this, and we stop them when the fully enriched uranium makes a better weapon than the plutonium in the first place. Now, when the President of the United States says things like that, and when the press gives it credibility, I get insulted. And right after I get insulted, I get angry. And I've been angry for quite a while now. And finally, one day, I said, my own personal security is not important. I think I'll go tell this tale. All I want is to tell my story. The commodity that I communicate is called truth. And so then I ask you a question, a very brief, pointed question. Who owns the plutonium, and how much is it worth? And then I'm going to attach on to that a question I want you to think about till we talk again. If you haven't been burned by this particular source of radiation, what is your problem? You obviously have one. Otherwise, you would join with me in telling the truth about this particular commodity. And so yes, I'm recruiting helpers. What happened to the guys who taught me the business? Thousands of them. The hands-on business. Where are they? They're still there. Why don't they talk? Who are the they that say this is the way the business is going to be run, whether it makes sense or not?
Brings you the nuclear scare scam with Galen Windsor.
We're back with Galen Windsor, and we're talking about the nuclear scare scam. Galen, it seems to me that from what I've heard you say that this scaring of the people is better than a lock and key to keep this stuff out of the hands of those who might be interested in investigating and keeping this valuable material hidden for just an elite few.
This is probably the way that it works best. And so then the secret was to keep from letting other people know that it could be handled, because first of all, we weren't accepted by the community, and the materials that we were working with, they feared. But there were certain few people that realized its real worth, its potential to be used in ways other than to support our national defense.
Let me ask you a question, Galen. Are you worried about do you have reason to be worried about your personal safety? Because the kind of people that you're describing here are powerful people. I wonder, you're still around, I wonder how much longer we can expect you to be in this game.
Well, on the 13th of December last year, the NRC, Nuclear Regulatory Commission, Region 5, turned out a federal SWAT team to get me on a federal warrant issued by Bob Thomas out of Walnut Creek, California. It was kind of funny in a way. They turned out this federal SWAT team at Hanford, and they had my picture, and alongside it says, "This is an irrational individual. He poses a threat to our security. Take him at any cost." Now, the reason that I'm still here only has one logical conclusion. I have lots of help.
Well, you've told us about how that you and others of your friends and colleagues have handled many times this so-called deadly nuclear energy material that the whole world is so scared of. Why weren't you afraid of it?
Because we did silly things like recover some of the undissolved fuel elements out of the redox dissolver that burned a hole in it. And we went in and sampled these things by remote process. We got it out into our hands and found out that we could walk around the lab with them barehanded and they wouldn't hurt us. And we were standing there in the lab tossing them back and forth. Uranium metal that wouldn't dissolve in the boiling nitric acid. Well, if you find out that you can play with it, and it was only 90 days since that thing came out of the reactor and it doesn't burn you, why should you be afraid of it?
So in other words, you're telling me that you learned to not be afraid of it because of practical use and application and hands-on experience?
Hands-on. We might even been playing games.
Okay, you say that you swam in this water that was straight from spent fuel used to cool that fuel, and
Yes.
you swam in it.
Yep.
You told me earlier that you went a little bit beyond that. Would you share a little bit of that story?
Well, swimming in it didn't have the desired effect. So I decided I had to be more direct with these people that were giving me trouble. They're kind of hard to teach, so I went to drinking a glass of it a day. I had the bottle of it. Last time I went swimming, I filled this 2-liter bottle with water and washed it off on the outside in the shower when I washed me off on the outside so that we didn't tattletale. You know, radioactive material is just a trace or a tattletale. So you got to get it off so they won't know that you've been swimming in the pool and drinking the water. So I took this bottle in and set it on my desk. And who would suspect that the manager of safety and analytical service had a bottle of spent fuel pool water sitting on his desk, and he drank a glass of it every day.
This was unheard of.
Nobody ever did that crazy stuff before.
How has that affected you, Galen?
Well, as near as I can tell, it made me about 6'4" in my cowboy boots, 210 pounds, and really quite a nice fellow.
All right. What then happened as a result of your doing this strange experiment on your desk with this water? What was the result?
Can corporations have a heart attack? I think General Electric had one, because after they ran me through a whole body gamma scan in December of 1974, by the time I got out, because I had a plutonium lung burden and it took 45 minutes to an hour to count that, everybody on site knew that the manager of safety had been swimming and drinking in the swimming pool, the spent fuel storage pool. Had cesium-137 at a ferociously high level. It even exceeded the NRC's limit. And I'd been drinking it. They knew the fat was in the fire. Now, where do we go from here? Well, first of all, I got a poison pen letter from the people in San Jose. And they says, "Thou shalt not do those things. They'll find out that the inventory can be stolen." Well, that didn't sit very well with this cowboy, because nobody tells me what to do, particularly when what I do is right and hasn't harmed me. Who are they to tell me what I want to do? It just didn't sit very well. I was going to do something about that.
What was your motive in this?
Correct information. As an expert in the measuring system, why, it was very obvious that I knew the parameters of inventory control, the disintegration rate of each of these isotopes, how to measure them. That's how we regulated our inventory. And to have these rascals come along and start playing games with the information that I was very expert in, that I had designed the analytical system for this plant around, disturbed me a little bit. No, it made me fighting mad, and I got angry. And I have to admit, in retrospect, that for the next 5-6 years, I was more than angry. I was hard to live with. Just ask my wife.
Well, in your estimation, then, how dangerous is a nuclear reactor plant?
A nuclear reactor plant is just a way to boil water that's the cleanest, neatest, most economical way to boil water that you've ever seen. And so, in my estimation, nuclear reactors ought to be insured under the same insurance policy as any other steam boiler plant, power generating plant. And to have special consideration under the Price-Anderson Act means that the insurance industry has already paid off the Congress so that they can have a ripoff, charging ever and higher insurance premiums, total coverage much, much greater for a non-existent risk. What a racket.
Can a nuclear plant explode?
Only like any other steam plant. Like Laughlin, Nevada had a steam explosion. It's a coal-fired plant, but 6 men were killed there last year. That could happen at a nuclear plant, but as far as an atomic explosion, good heavens, no. No way.
What kind of accidents can actually happen at a nuclear reactor generator plant?
You could lose your moderator and the reactor would shut down, the control rods would stick in and you wouldn't be able to start it up. You might do several things that would invalidate some of the safety controls. For instance, an emergency core cooling system. The only reason they put ECCS on a reactor is to destroy it. When you start these big babies up, because they're so big, you only warm them up 50 degrees an hour. And they say, we got an emergency, throw the emergency core cooling system on like they did at 3 Mile Island 2, and you're going to thermally shock that big machine and ruin it so it can never be used again.
Let's talk about 3 Mile Island. What really happened there? We've heard all kinds of stories about meltdown, and they made movies on it that this meltdown could melt right through the earth, clear through to China, and we've seen a lot of scare stories. What really happened to 3 Mile Island? Do you know what really happened there?
Yes, I do. I followed that one very closely. In fact, I know the guys personally who wrote the script for China Syndrome and also wrote the script for the 3 Mile Island fiasco. Dale Breidenbaugh, Dick Hubbard, and Greg Miner, who used to work with me at General Electric, are the MBH associates that wrote that China Syndrome script. And not only that, remember that was the time China Syndrome came out, Jane Fonda starring. 14 months ahead of the TMI-2 accident, it was predicted in writing in New York State that that accident would happen 1 year from the date that that 3 Mile Island 2 reactor started up. It started up in March 1978, and it went down March 28, 1979, right on the day, 1 year anniversary. In other words, with 14 months advance notice, the industry still went along with the sham. Nothing happened there except that the owner, the operator, and the regulators conspired to turn it off.
What melted?
The top of the fuel rods, the third time that the core got uncovered, due to internal pressure, blew the top off some of those rods. They've got Inconel springs in them to keep the pellets, fuel pellets, from vibrating when it's running. Those things are under compression, and when they reduced the outside pressure and the fuel rods were still hot, it blew the top off some of those fuel rods. The fuel rods in TMI-2 are internally pressurized to about 1200 psi with helium gas so that they don't reverse dent when they're hot and running for 5 years. And when they drop the outside pressure, why, that internal pressure with those hot rods blew the side out of some of those rods at the top. But melting, the fuel is already an oxide ceramic. It is a pellet. It's been pressed into a ceramic. When you pick it up and feel it, it feels like metal. It's pressed so very, very tight, hard. And so, no, the fuel didn't melt. The China Syndrome is a scriptwriter's fantasy. Right here, I ought to tell a story, I guess. See, I spent 3 weeks on the island in March of 1981, the 2-year anniversary of this particular, quote, accident. And Tom Hall, who stood alongside Enrico Fermi when they pulled the control rods on 100B in October 1944 at Hanford, and I were delegated to go to the island and find out what happened, and so we did. We went over all of the records and everything else, and near as we could tell from performance records, 51 thermocouples, for instance, only one of which went over 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The center line temperature of those rods when they're running is 4,032 degrees Fahrenheit. And so they say things like over 50% of the core was greater than 4,000 degrees. Yes, it was. If it wasn't running at 100% power. So they take that kind of information and bugger it all up so that you don't understand what's going on. They give you a little bit of it. Well, the worst joke that people could dream up, and they says, do you know what the NRC's worst nightmare is? No, I don't know what that is. Galen Windsor and Tom Hall in the TMI-2 control room for an hour by themselves. You know why people that know laugh? these crazy guys from Hanford would have started that baby up and showed that it would run. We'd have started it up, and they were afraid of us.
So there was no accident at 3 Mile Island?
No, they did it on purpose. Shut it down.
Very interesting. Can nuclear radiation cause mutation in people and animals?
If a cell gets too much radiation, it dies. And so if it is a sperm or an ovocyte, why, they die. They don't reproduce, and there are no mutations. I think the good Lord built that safety factor in.
So you're saying that mutation in future generations is an unfounded fear?
Yes, and the studies of the people at Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
So what the fuck did we do to China? And what the fuck did we do to Japan? Not a motherfucking thing. But we in trillions of dollars worth of debt behind some bullshit, bro. Boy. I can't wait till the next video. I want to go to sleep and let this shit get in my soul, so I can teach it from my soul to these people. Folk playing. Trump was on that bit the other night, how much motherfucking nuclear war, World War III. World War III nuclear war. Man, shut the fuck up. Blow the globe the fuck up. Because that's what we done. We done blow that shit up.
You have borne that out. Those people do not have that. Now, they showed the immediate effects of too much radiation. The women who were pregnant the embryo showed the effects of very similar to rubella, measles. Some deformity, certainly, from that radiation insult. But that's not the kind of mutation that's going to go on to the next generation.
The generation.
Galen, what and where?
We supposed to fuck them folks up for generations. And the same motherfuckers turn around and own us today.
Are these burial sites and what's in them for this so-called nuclear waste? I've been hearing stories about stainless steel containers buried in concrete under the ocean, boiling for over 2,000 years.
That sounds like a real story. Let me start out by saying there are no nuclear waste, only materials created in a reactor to be recovered and used beneficially. Now, high-level waste is radioactive and self-heating. And so fuel, reusable uranium fuel, fits that definition. But if you disregard its intrinsic worth, why then, yeah, it would fit the definition of high-level waste. But let's say there isn't any high-level waste, only material to be recovered and used beneficially. Then what's the low-level waste fiasco? That's an excuse for a federally mandated, non-inspectable disposal system so that organized crime can get rid of any evidence that they want and it can never be dug up again.
They're afraid to look in there.
Not afraid. They don't want you to. They've got rules on the transport so that if you have an accident with a low-level radioactive waste shipment, why, you call out all of the state police and you make sure that nobody looks at it, that nobody gets exposed, that there's no spreading of the contaminated material. And it's also that you don't find out whose body's in that drum. The situation got so bad that the smell of human flesh was so great that they made it so that you could ship animal biological waste in refrigerated vans so that it wouldn't stink up before you got it buried.
What is then in these low-level or high-level or whatever containers under the ocean?
Nothing. But if you see, they were one time dropping barrels of radioactive waste off barges in the ocean. Do you know what was in them? Not high-level self-heating radioactive waste. Probably had a few bodies and a few guns and a few knives and a few evidences in them too. If you drop them in the ocean, they are truly disposed of. So you know there's an international trade in that right now? You can't do it in the United States, so they transship it across the ocean to South Africa, and they can bury it offshore.
So
what is in those drums?
Well, that's what you're telling me then, that I needn't worry about boiling drums under the ocean for 2,000 years.
No way.
Thank you. I'm glad to know that. Well, one more question, Galen. What do you feel like a good portion of these men in Congress know this already?
I know they do. I went there 4 years ago and sat down with the Senate legal staff and told them my hour-and-a-half-long sad story, and Sam Bollinger, one of the lawyers, stood up and he says, Galen, if I understand you right, why you want us to have President Reagan snap his finger and make this thing come up straight. And I says, hey, Sam, terrific. Go ahead and do it. He didn't take that challenge. He says, no, I'll tell you what, Galen, industry likes it the way that it is. I said, Sam, you really know how to hurt a guy. And he says, well, if we change it, what are we going to do for an encore? Yeah, they're fully aware that this thing goes on as far up as the President of the United States. It's the way that industry wants it. The industry is its own problem then.
So the question is then, what is the industry? What is the real story here? Is this an industry of nuclear energy?
The industry has been ripping it off for years and years. In 1975, we knew that large nuclear reactors were dead, that large is not the way to go. The way to go is small, mass-produced nuclear reactors sitting right in the middle of town, one every 10 blocks, producing power. We haven't built a reactor right yet. It's time that we do it. Why haven't we? Because of a federal energy cartel. These guys control the amount of electricity, the availability, and the price. And they say, you do not have a choice. I have a choice. I'm going to take one of those decommissioned nuclear subs up in Puget Sound, refuel it, and generate my own electricity. Save the government $5 million because that's what they want to throw them away. I will use it for my own power purpose. Quinn Millian up in Omak, Washington, and I are moving on that. And if one of these days I hook one of them up to Pier 91 in Seattle, don't be surprised.
Well, good luck.
I'm Galen Windsor, and I thought I'd share a few hands-on practical things that have to do with this nuclear scare scam. Now, you've heard that gamma energy, the kind of energy that comes off a rock like this, is the most penetrating, most damaging of all radiation. And not only that, here is uranium, the parent of radon, and they say if you can detect radon in a home, then it's bad. If you exceed the EPA's limit, it's reason to run you out of your home. Spend $13,000 like they did with Stanley Watrous' house in Pennsylvania the other day to get rid of the radon, to ventilate it out through. Ridiculous. Let's take them one at a time. This is a rock that I picked up in Natarita, Colorado. 16 weight percent uranium. High-grade uranium. Hot. I read a thing the other day that says they had high-grade uranium, and lo and behold, it's too hot to transport, so they had to bury it on site. Oh, wonderful. Let's talk a little bit about radiation. If we can, are we picking up? If you put the probe right there, the meter goes off scale, and you can hear it, all right? Hot. Radiation, gamma radiation is the most penetrating of all radiation. Oh, is it? All it's got between the rock and the probe is my hand. Doesn't count so pretty much, does it? What if I put the rock behind me? You don't suppose they've been lying to you, do you? I suspect they have. Well, let's do a little bit more. I got a black bottle. This stuff comes in white bottle. a bottle of no-dose. You can send children down to the drugstore to buy no-dose. All they need is money. In this are 60 white caffeine pellets. In this one is uranium oxide, U308. You can't buy it for love nor money. The state of Washington sent 2 of their Gestapo agents over to my home to confiscate my uranium samples on the 17th of December last year. Got a challenge. I'd like to have somebody in the room volunteer to take all of this bottle or all of this bottle. The only thing that I'll tell you is that one of them won't hurt you and the other one will kill you. You want the white stuff or the black stuff? White stuff? You do. There's enough in there to kill 4 men your size. The government says we got to ban this material. It's radioactive. Let's check it in the bottom of the bottle. Not very radioactive. Let's take the cap off. Oh goodness, very radioactive. This instrument will only count gamma, energy. It's just energy. Light's coming from those lights, only you're getting lots of infrared from the lights as well as ultraviolet. Energy response, and it's very carefully damped to only discriminated so it only gets the energy that comes from this. I don't want it to respond to a light, just to this. Cost me $1,000 to get an instrument that'll just respond to this and not to that. This is radioactive by any definition. Radioactive material giving off radiation that is read by an instrument like this. The daughter of this, radon, cannot be read on this instrument because it gives off alpha particles. An alpha particle is a dye-positive particle that comes from the nucleus. It has 2 protons and 2 neutrons, therefore an atomic weight of 4, and it's minus 2 electrons. And if you grab it with a high ionization potential counter, it'll count. But if it travels 2 inches in air or through a piece of paper, it picks up 2 electrons, 2 beta particles, if you will, and becomes helium gas, and it won't count on an ionization chamber. Did you know that this thing right here is giving off helium gas? Alpha comes from uranium. Okay, radioactive material. You pour it out in the hand, and that's radioactive contamination. Is it radioactive? Yeah, it is. Very radioactive. Now, decontamination is nothing but scooping it back up and putting it into the bottle. I just now decontaminated my hand. No, I didn't do such a good job. Not good at all. Is it still radioactive? Yeah, that's called residual radioactivity. Now, under the decontamination rules of the government, when you decontaminate somebody like this that's that contaminated, and this is certainly a reportable incident under current DOE regulations, when you decontaminate him, it has to go down a controlled drain so that you don't disperse radioactivity. Do I qualify as a controlled drain? That material that I just ate is not soluble in body fluids. Like it's been this. It was fired originally at 940 degrees C, where it becomes U308. Known in the industry as HCl insoluble. In other words, it will not dissolve in concentrated hydrochloric acid, hot. Your stomach has 10th normal hydrochloric acid in it, so it won't even dissolve. The stuff is so fine that it has no texture to it. Doesn't even feel rough. So it's tasteless, odorless, has no texture. How is it supposed to hurt me? Because I've been eating this on lecture tour for 2 years, the state of Washington felt it necessary to confiscate my uranium samples so that I would be safe. Dr. Fulton from the Hanford Environmental Health Foundation called up and he says, "Hey, I heard one of your guys OD'd on uranium today, Galen." And we talked for a little while and he says, "Oh, that was you." And I says, "Listen, I can eat all that stuff I want." He says, "It'll ruin your kidneys." "How are your kidneys?" "They're fine." "Well, you should have been chelated within 4 hours. And I mean, you guys are going to follow me around the country and give me chelating agents every 4 hours after I eat it on lecture tour?" He says, "We'll give you any medical assistance that you need, Galen. We don't want anything to happen to you." I said, "Did that include turning out the federal SWAT team 4 days ago to get me?" Where are these guys coming from? Well, here's a piece of metal. Density of 19.0. If you know your chemistry and physics, you know that there are only two metals that have that density: plutonium and uranium. Radioactive, pyrophoric, density of 19. Outside of a laboratory, most of you can't tell me whether this is uranium, plutonium, or a mixture of the two. Now, I said that it's heavy, and it is. Let's see if it's radioactive. Yeah, it is. Pyrophoric, what does that mean? Pyro, fire. Black on the end. The spark that just came off there is pyro, fire, burned. If it's plutonium, I just contaminated this area of Arizona in excess of the EPA's limit for 1 square mile of surface. Somebody laughed. It's serious. The end of progress altogether says that I just contaminated you in excess of the limit for 1 square mile. It's now silver on the end. Tomorrow it'll be black because it self-oxidizes, this black color, like this, all by itself. Plutonium does that and uranium does that. Is it hazardous? Yeah, it is, because they take depleted uranium metal and make it into 50 caliber bullets, fire them from shoulder-held weapons. In 1976, they obsoleted tank warfare with these things because it only takes one dog face with one weapon to knock out a 65-ton tank. It'll go through 3 inches of armor plate, and when it comes out the other side, it's that white hot spark that we just made. And the 5 men in that tank are dead, because it'll burn all of the oxygen out of the air and burn their flesh. 1976, they obsoleted tank warfare, and you never even knew that. They make 10,000 of those bullets every day in the United States. We got enough in arsenal to sink all of Russia's tanks, and our boys in the Defense Department don't even talk about it. Yeah, it's hazardous to your health. Reminds me, lead is hazardous to your health too, isn't it? Particularly if it's in a 45 slug like this and it hits you right here going about 2,600 feet per second. It's not the material, it's the impact from the velocity. Let's be very specific in the words that we use. This particular chunk of lead came out of a human body. My son, who's a deputy sheriff, thought maybe I could use it on tour. That's called dying of lead poisoning. Anything less is a figment of the imagination because it's not soluble in body fluid either. This is a pellet of cobalt-59. If you put it in a reactor into a neutron field, you can convert cobalt-59 to cobalt-60, which gives off a gamma. It becomes the source that doctors use to irradiate patients to 7,000 Roentgen for one patient. The total dose absorbed by radiation workers at 3 Mile Island in the last 6 years is something like 1,500 Roentgen. 5 times more given to a single individual in a doctor's facility. Now, do you know why I say that the federal regulations are absurd? And if you live by those federal regulations, maybe you're being absurd too? Now, a pellet of cobalt-60 this size got shipped by mistake to Mexico, got diluted into 5,000 tons of iron. Some of the reinforcing rod came up to Los Alamos, New Mexico, and they says, hey, that stuff's radioactive. Understand that this single pellet diluted roughly a factor of 1 billion was what they were reading on a detector like this at Los Alamos. And so they pulled back table legs that were in Spokane, Washington, made out of the same batch, because it was hot and radioactive and it would burn you. When the pellet itself could be held in your hand like that for a few minutes without it burning you. Now, Christ walked the earth 1 billion minutes ago. If I could stretch this pellet out into a wire and it went clear around the earth and right back here to Phoenix, 1 billionth of this amount is 1.7 inches of that wire so stretched out. Stagger your mind? It ought to. Now, let's try a little game. The EPA says that 5 picocuries per liter of air is the limit for 222 radon. And they handle that like it's a real number. Madame Curie says that 1 gram of radium equals 1 curie equals 2.22 times 10 to the 12th disintegrations per minute. And that's the basic definition of radioactivity. How many disintegrations is this? Should we find out? And the EPA, in its wisdom, says that 11 disintegrations per minute from 1 liter of air, you have exceeded the limit. You know what I did the other day? I've been having a little tough with some legal authorities up in my house. So I took one of these bottles of uranium like this, and I dissolved it in an Erlenmeyer flask with nitric acid. And I got a crack in the basement floor, and I squirted that whole bottle into that crack on the basement floor in acid solution, so that it'll drive that counter off 3rd scale, any place along a 10-foot section of that crack that I put. When they bring the radon measurement in there, you know what the radon's going to do? It's going to go off scale in their measurement. It won't go that high. If Watrous' house with 17 times this limit in it was caused to spend $13,000 and give it national TV coverage, press coverage, think what Galen Windsor's house is like. I went to the trouble to notify my congressman about it. Mike Lawrence, the manager of the Department of Energy in the Pacific Northwest, my state representative, Ray Isaacson, and a few other astute people, including the banker and the lawyers and the appeal court. What are they going to do with that? I set them up on that last Thursday, and I come down to Phoenix, so I escaped the falderall. What I'm saying to you is that the federal regulations are absurd. The congressman that put them into place ought to be fired. They ought to be sent home. The regulators, what do you do with them? Quit paying them. The taxpayer, the electorate, elects those people to go out and do a job. Why do you continue to pay them when they're teaching you baloney? When they're putting in regulations that don't make any sense? Cut it out. Quit paying them, fire them, send them home. The term I grew up with says can them. Is it easy? Apparently not. You haven't got the job done. Majority of the Congress is irresponsible, amoral, atheistic, irresponsible. Let's see, how many more adjectives can I drum up? But that many. Let me tell you. We as the people sent a bunch of rascals out to the energy store with a signed blank check. And we say, hey fellows, if you run out of money, just go build us a good power plant. If you run out of money, come back and we'll give you another signed blank check and guarantee the payment out of the ratepayer's pocket. Tennessee Valley Authority has the most nuclear reactors of any outfit in the place. Not one of them has produced any power since last August. Browns Ferry 1, 2, and 3 in Mississippi hasn't produced any power since last March. And they don't plan on producing any power at Browns Ferry until mid-year in '86. At $1 million a day in lost power revenue per plant and held off in the name of health and safety? Now tell me we didn't send rascals out to the energy marketplace with a signed blank check. They're still getting paid. Those reactors are all fully fueled, fully staffed, and just sitting there. Who's getting taken? The ratepayer. You're still paying more and more for your electricity all of the time. Now, Bonneville Power Administration says that 57% availability is okay for a nuclear reactor. Maine Yankee is often run at 103% availability, which means it's running over nameplate rating. Enough days out of the year that its average availability is 100%. Bonneville Power Administration of the Department of Energy says that 57% availability is okay. That means that you can let those things set down 43% of the year, and that's judged as an acceptable performance on the part of the government. There's an obvious answer. Get the government out of the energy regulating business. Turn those plants over to people who will run them efficiently 100% of the time. When we put in zero-release containment, we started playing games. About the time that we proved that a nuclear reactor has no measurable impact upon the environment, that's when they bottled them up, put catalytic recombiners on them. Some of the reactors in Texas were designed not to breathe for 8 years at great expense. Why? When you bottle up a reactor like TMI-2 does, then you get radiolytic hydrogen, and indeed they had a radiolytic hydrogen burn at TMI-2. And they moan and they groan about that, and all they had to do was open up the windows and let the breezes blow through. You don't need containment on them. I'm going up to Colorado this weekend to meet with the Uranium Producers Association. And they're upset because the government is dumping uranium on the market and raising the price of the commodity that they get their bread and butter from. But what they're totally unaware of is that the Grand Junction Operation Office is going to issue a contract so that the new operator has a $25 million budget over the next 5 years, 80% of which will be spent for remedial action. Where you take this material, dig it up, if you find it counts on a Geiger counter, you can have them come in and change out the whole front yard of your house, give you a new front yard, new foundation under your house at government expense. If you don't do it, they'll take you down to the courthouse, blacklist your property, so that you have to remove the radioactivity at your own expense before it can be sold. Now, do you know what I did when I took that uranium solution and poured it at the crack in my house? I set up the United States government, and that episode is about to be played. Did I do it on purpose? Yeah, I did, just like I used to dive into that swimming pool and drink that cesium-contaminated water. I found out that it doesn't hurt me. You need to find out that it doesn't hurt me or you. In fact, the only reason for the existence of these big transcontinent distribution lines would be if they could compete with a small mass-produced reactor sitting in your backyard. Why don't they want you to? Because they are the federal energy cartel. They like to set the price, the total availability, and whether you can hook onto it, and if you don't pay your bill, cut you off. That's called power, domain, and control. And they like that. They do not want you to be energy independent. If you had one of these sitting in every 10-block area in Phoenix, you could tell the rest of the world to go get lost. Oh, there's another use for that heat. You could heat your homes in the wintertime, or you could cool them in the summertime with it. Heating, ventilation, air conditioning, they call it, HVAC. In countries where it freezes, you could run that hot water out and chase the frost away in the spring and in the fall. And they found out that plants grow faster in warm water anyway, so you'd irrigate with it all summer. So cooling towers are called wasting towers. They throw over 50% of the heat away. The other morning, coming out of Tri-Cities, WNP2 was putting its 700 megawatt electric up through the clouds, 870. They were running that. And the clouds were laying all over the ground, and there was a little ice cream cone right out there, and I said, there's WNP2. It snows 5 inches every night out of WNP2, and the rest of us don't get any. Where'd the water come from? That's cooling the heat from the condenser cooler. You should have a business right out there, an oil cracking plant, something taking that heat and using it, like they built at Midland, Michigan, 10 years ago, and they've never used. And so Dow Chemical is suing the utility because they never produced the steam for their chemical plant right alongside it. We got troubles in this country. I'm telling you what the problem is. Doing something about it, responsibility is yours.
Really consider Indeed like a partner has just been so critical to the success of Ship Sunshine. Using sponsored jobs was kind of a no-brainer for me, especially because you only have to pay for quality candidates. The end-to-end hiring process was just so much more efficient. I mean, it took a lot less time. Previously, it probably would take about a month to find a candidate. I think we ended up finding the right candidate and teammate using the sponsored job feature within a week.
Christians, get out and vote just this time. You won't have to do it anymore. 4 more years, you know what? It'll be fixed. It'll be fine. You won't have to vote anymore, my beautiful Christians. I love you, Christians. I'm a Christian. I love you. Get out. You got to get out and vote.
That was Donald Trump telling an audience that they wouldn't have to vote anymore while pandering to an audience of Christians. Between Republicans passing laws mandating that the 10 Commandments be shown in classrooms, abortion bans, and even Mike Johnson calling the separation of church and state a misnomer, Christian nationalism is clearly on the rise by Republicans, which brings us to a very timely episode of Class with Jamie Raskin, where the congressman here will debunk right-wing constitutional fallacies and fever dreams. And today, he's going to take on this notion that America is a white Christian nation where the Bible is supreme and superior to the Constitution. So, Congressman, floor is yours.
Well, that is the heart of white Christian nationalism, and we have seen it rear its ugly head in a lot of places, including on January 6, 2021. We get lots of manifestations of it in Project 2025, and of course, Donald Trump's outbursts encode that basic message that we'll get through this democracy thing quickly enough, and then we'll get back to having the right people rule. So what we're going to look at today is the fallacy that America is a white Christian nation where the Bible is dominant and supreme to the Constitution. But I want to look at both parts of it, that America is a Christian nation and that America is a white nation. Let's start with the claim that America is a Christian nation. And there's only one sense, and one sense only, in which this is even arguably or even weakly true, which is in the purely demographic sense, where it could be said, well, America has 332 million people, and more than 200 million of them are Christian. Therefore, if you've got nearly 2/3 of Americans who are Christian, America's a Christian nation. And you could, perform a similar operation with race and say, of those 332 million people, something around 70% of those people are white, maybe 63 or 64% would define themselves in the census as only white and not white and something else. But in any event, a majority of the people would call themselves white in some sense, and therefore it's a white nation. Well, if you want to use that kind of demographic circular reasoning, that tautology, and that does something for you, I suppose you can go ahead and say it. But of course, there's nothing which freezes the population either in terms of religion or race, and it's predicted that America won't be a majority white country in 25 years, and I guess even in that narrow limited demographic sense, it wouldn't even be true. But all of that is really beside the point, because although they sometimes will hide behind that tent, we know that when they say America's a Christian country or a white country, they're making an assertion about the nature of our social contract and about the nature of our Constitution, and it's just wrong. Oftentimes it's wrapped in historical claims. Those claims are overwhelmingly wrong as well. And then when those constitutional assertions are converted into political and moral claims, well, at that point, the normative argument clearly becomes a racist one. So let's go back to the beginning and let's look at the nature of the American Revolution, and then the Declaration of Independence, and the American Constitution, to see whether there's any basis for this claim that America is a Christian country. Well, to begin with, the leaders of the American Revolution, the intellectual and political leaders, people like Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin and John Adams and James Madison and Tom Paine, these people were Enlightenment liberals who wanted to rebel against centuries of religious superstition, state-imposed religion, religion-controlled government, and theocracy. They were opposed to centuries of religious warfare between the Catholics and the Protestants, which were every bit as bloody and vicious as the wars between the Shia and the Sunni today in the Muslim world. And they wanted to oppose holy crusades, inquisition, witchcraft trials, the whole apparatus of religious persecution, which they wanted to leave in the Middle Ages and did not think belonged in a period of modern democratic enlightenment. And so they set about creating a government that radically separated church and state. And as Madison would put it in his famous remonstrance against religious taxation, that left matters of faith to each individual, to each man and woman to decide for himself or herself what their relationship to God would be, without the government intervening and getting involved and compelling people to worship a particular way or pray a particular way or pay taxes or tithes to particular churches and religions and so on. So the Declaration of Independence does not mention the word God. It does talk about a creator, and the dominant themes of the Declaration of Independence are that we are endowed by our creator with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and unalienable rights, and that the only legitimating principle for government is the consent of the governed, the people themselves, that the right to rule does not come from God or come from a church, but it comes from the consent of the governed, the people ourselves. And all men, of course, we would translate it today as all men and women, but all men are created equal. So you have in the Declaration of Independence the elucidation of the basic themes of equality, liberty and freedom and democracy, the consent of the governed, as being the essential legitimating principles for governance. And that was the basic concept of the Declaration of Independence, which of course set forth a bill of particulars against the king, who claimed to rule with divine right and an established church. But the American Revolution wanted to topple all of that. And that becomes clear when we get to the Constitution. Of course, there were iterative drafts between the Declaration and the Constitution. There were Articles of Association. There were Articles of Confederation. Again, none of those mention God, much less Christianity or an established church. And when we get to the Constitution, the preamble is anchored in the democratic principle itself. We the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and preserve to ourselves and our posterity the blessings of liberty, do hereby ordain and establish the Constitution of the United States. And you see what's happening there. The government, the Constitution, are both founded by the people themselves. And before that point, human beings had been ruled by kings and queens and lords and emperors and empresses and czars, all of them ruling by divine right. They got their power directly from God. Our forefathers and foremothers flipped the whole thing upside down, and they began not with God and the king, but rather with we the people. So that was the basic structure of the democratic public philosophy that's advanced inside the Constitution. And then, of course, Article 1 establishes that all legislative power rests with the people, not with a monarch or even with a president who somehow has higher consciousness and communion with God. And remember, the presidency was only added to the Constitution later. It was not, there was no president in the Articles of Confederation, but the idea was we needed somebody to keep things going between sessions of Congress and to act with energy to implement the laws and the will of the people. But the principal job of the president was to take care that the laws are faithfully executed, but not to act as a king, not to be above the Constitution or above the people. Now, I know that all of that has been thrown into doubt by the neo-monarchical hallucinations and rulings of the Roberts Court now, which does seem to want to elevate the president, who they imagined was going to be Donald Trump. But I think they're getting their comeuppance right now because democracy is resilient and strong. But I digress. But in any event, the president, like the Supreme Court, also operated simply as manifestations of the public will and then the structuring of checks and balances within a system of representative government. But the key passages that actually talk about religion are, of course, in the First Amendment and in Article 6. And that's what everybody needs to know. And that's pretty much the beginning and the end of the story. I mean, we can spend a lot of time going through the case law and seeing how the Supreme Court has spelled it out over the centuries. But look what you get in the very First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. No establishment of a church. That's a radical break from England and from all prior governments, nor prohibiting the free exercise thereof. It's up to you. It is your individual right of conscience that matters in a society based on democratic freedom, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So the First Amendment is all about sovereignty of mind. Your intellectual freedom to make your own decisions about what you believe, what you say, whether you want to assemble, how you want to organize yourself in terms of the politics of society. But it begins with religious freedom, that you cannot be compelled to worship a particular way, to participate in a particular church or any church at all, to pay taxes for ministers or imams or rabbis. None of that is acceptable. So that's the First Amendment. But then you got to go to Article 6, where the point is made, even more forcefully by the founders, and If you go to Article 6, it says, the senators and representatives and the members of the several state legislatures and all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and of the several states, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution, a principle we've encountered before when we looked at Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, explicit language saying if you engage in insurrection, having pledged to uphold and defend the Constitution, you can never hold federal or state office again. The passage that that MAGA and this Supreme Court have wanted to read out of the Constitution. But in any event, it goes on to say, but no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. No religious tests for public office. So what do we have? No establishment of religion, religious liberty of conscience and freedom of thought, and no religious tests for public office can ever be created at the federal or the state level. Okay, that would seem to be overwhelming textual refutation of the claim that we are a religious country, or we are a Christian country, or we are a Christian country of a particular denomination. And all of American history incorporates and encodes an elaboration of these basic principles. Now, I'm not saying it's always been easy. It hasn't. It's always been a struggle. It continues to be a struggle. It's going on right now with respect to the Ten Commandments. I think Louisiana just adopted a law requiring the posting of the Ten Commandments in every public school classroom, which is a head-on collision with a Supreme Court decision rendered in 1980 called Stone versus Graham, which struck down a state law mandating the posting of the Ten Commandments in every classroom. Although in that case, the Ten Commandments displays were supposed to be paid for by private money, which the court majority quickly ruled was totally irrelevant. That didn't sanitize it. In some sense, that made it worse, that attempted alibi by saying, oh, it was paid for by private money. But of course, the display itself was very clearly an endorsement of a particular religious test. And yet, this Ten Commandments thing is sweeping the red states, Brian. We've had members come into the House Judiciary Committee and say, oh, we should go ahead and endorse the Ten Commandments, just like Texas just endorsed the Ten Commandments. Louisiana just endorsed the Ten Commandments. And I said, the Ten Commandments have been doing fine for millennia without an endorsement from the House Freedom Caucus or the House of Representatives. No, they say the Ten Commandments are the cornerstone, the foundation of the Bill of Rights. Really, the first commandment is thou shalt have no other God before me. The First Amendment is that there shall be no establishment of religion and freedom of religious worship, right? So how is that religious directive in a particular monotheistic religion the basis for saying there shall be religious freedom? If anything, our framers in their irreverent way set up a First Amendment which directly collides with the First Commandment. And most of those commandments, or a lot of those commandments, are of a theological nature and have nothing to do with anything that you would find in the Bill of Rights. That would be an interesting homework assignment for all of our readers. Take out the Ten Commandments and take out the first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights, and compare them and see if they really match up one for one. I don't think so. I ended up going to the Rules Committee and saying, if they're going to make the House of Representatives vote on the Ten Commandments, we should have to vote on each commandment separately and not get away with the omnibus package. And you can't vote for any commandment you've ever violated yourself, because then you'll be taking the name of the Lord in vain in violation of the third commandment. So this is precisely what the framers didn't want us to do. They didn't want people to get together in the House of Representatives or the U.S. Senate or a state legislature or a school board and start fighting about religion. Like, everybody has the right to worship as they please, but that's not what public space is for, and the government is for. We do not live in a theocracy, and we do not live in a Christian nation. We live in a nation that is built on the principles of constitutional democracy and freedom for everybody. And just as that applies in the religious context, it applies in the racial context, except it's a little bit more complicated there, Brian, because we were, one would say, a nation built on white supremacy. And for that proposition, you can go and read the Dred Scott decision in 1857. And Dred Scott was a slave, an enslaved human being who was brought into free territory and then tried to bring a suit against his master for his freedom. Dred Scott versus Sanford, and yet a pro-racist, pro-slavery Supreme Court ruled that there was no federal court jurisdiction under Article 3, where you need to have diversity, meaning a citizen from one state suing a citizen from another state. And the Supreme Court held that that an enslaved person, an enslaved African person, or his progeny could never be a citizen within the meaning of the diversity jurisdiction clause. Why? Well, it was an argument actually about original intent and original understanding, that under the original contemplation of the founders, said the Supreme Court, this was set up as a white man's compact. The Constitution was for white men only, and the African slave had no rights that the white man was bound to respect. So that would be a more plausible argument before the Civil War, that this was a white man's nation. But the Civil War changed all of that. And the 13th Amendment abolished slavery, and the 14th Amendment established equal protection and due process, and established that everybody born in the United States is a citizen of the United States. And the 15th Amendment banned race discrimination in voting. Now, it worked for a while under Reconstruction. Then there was terrible racist backsliding in the southern states, and the so-called redemption with the repeal of Reconstruction and the war on Reconstruction. And a lot of the political rights and voting rights, certainly, that were gained by the emancipated black population were lost at that point, and only to be recovered after the modern civil rights movement took place nearly a century later. But in any event, constitutionally, we are not a white supremacist country. We are a country that, in the Reconstruction process and with those amendments, tried to purge the filth of Dred Scott and white supremacy from the Constitution, and to take positive action to extend rights to people who had been denied rights for so long. That has been an historical struggle. That's what the Civil Rights Act was all about in 1964. That's what the Voting Rights Act was all about in 1965. And it's still a seesaw struggle today. And we have, again, a right-wing Supreme Court, which in cases like Shaw versus Reno, 1993, Miller versus Johnson, has been dismantling majority black and majority Hispanic congressional districts and state legislative districts, saying you cannot have a bizarrely drawn majority black district, but of course if it's a bizarrely drawn majority white district, it's totally okay. That is unequal protection. And those are some of the kinds of inequalities that have been reintegrated into the law through a right-wing Supreme Court. And today, of course, the Equal Protection Clause does work best for white people challenging affirmative action or having to endure the indignity from their perspective of living in a majority black congressional district than it works for the intended beneficiaries of the 14th Amendment. But still, I would say we've made tremendous progress basically through the struggle of the people. That's still going on today. And the vast majority of the American people embrace the real constitutional ethos that emerges from the Reconstruction period, which is that we are not a white supremacist nation. We are not a white nation. We are a nation of immigrants, and we're a nation of people who were brought over as enslaved human beings, but are now obviously a central part of the political, social, and cultural fabric of the country. So these issues continue to be fought about, but it cannot be said with a straight face that we are a white Christian nation. And we know when they say that, that's a statement of their aspiration and ambition. It's not a statement of constitutional reality.
Well, that is another constitutional fallacy debunked. I've got questions, Congressman, but first, just a quick note. We always try to use this opportunity for these classes to promote a cause that the Congressman is working on. So, as always, Congressman, can you speak about Democracy Summer?
Well, so we've got more than 1,000 young people across the country who've been deeply engaged in this campaign. And of course, everybody's been re-energized and revitalized by Kamala Harris's candidacy and by the courage and the heroism and the patriotism of President Biden, who has passed the baton to a new generation. And the reason that Democracy Summer exists is to organize this onrush of enthusiasm and participation by all of these young people. So we're getting people registered, we're getting people plugged into the campaigns all over the country. And if you want to help us out in Democracy Summer, please follow the instructions up on the screen and you can get in touch with us. And we're raising money and we're raising volunteers, and it's very exciting to see what's going on all over the country.
And we've got one more. This time, the Congressman was kind enough to allow me to promote my upcoming book, which Representative Raskin himself actually wrote the foreword for. We've heard here a little bit about how Republicans present themselves as constitutionalists, all while acting in direct opposition to the Constitution itself, embracing Christian nationalism, for example. My book, Shameless, discusses exactly that point, how Republicans rely on their historic branding to give themselves cover to behave in conflict with their branding.
You've written a fantastic book. It's completely readable. I just digested it in one day, and it's impressive how you expose the intellectual hollowness of the MAGA position and show that it has no anchor in reality. It's got no real anchor in our history. It's a twisted and deformed view of American society, and I'm very proud to be able to endorse your book and encourage people to go out and read it.
Well, I very much appreciate that. And of course, for those watching, to pre-order, which is a great way to support this series, my work, you can click the link right here on the screen or in the post description, or check out briantylercohen.com/book. Okay, to the questions here. Congressman, so much of the pushback to the idea of separation of church and state is that the actual words separation of church and state aren't actually in the Constitution. What's your rebuttal to that?
Well, I read the words that are actually in it. In some sense, those words are even stronger. There shall be no law respecting an establishment of religion nor prohibiting the free exercise thereof. It doesn't really say anything about having a thriving, buoyant religious sector, but the idea of separation of church and state gives religion its due by Thomas Jefferson. He's saying we want not only a powerful secular state that is not wasting its time trying to interpose itself between people and their God and their sense of the infinite and the supernatural, but Jefferson is saying religion can have a very positive, meaningful influence in people's lives, and it doesn't help for the state to get involved. There's some beautiful language about this, by the way. I printed out before I came Madison's Memorial and Remonstrance against religious taxation, which I mentioned before. There's a beautiful question. He says, during almost 15 centuries, has the legal establishment of Christianity been on trial? In other words, we've been trying official establishment Christian churches for 15 centuries. What have been its fruits, says Madison? More or less in all places, pride and indolence in the clergy, ignorance and servility in the laity, in both superstition, bigotry, and persecution. In other words, the churches don't have to go out and compete by having better theology. So they get puffed up on their own arrogance and their laziness. Ignorance and servility in the laity, when people are compelled to go to church, then they are turned into docile puppets of the state and church unified in that way. And then superstition, bigotry, and persecution. I think that Jefferson and Madison, those guys, had a lot of hope for the progress of religion. I mean, Jefferson made his own Bible. It was later called Jefferson's Bible. He never called it a Bible, but I think he called it the philosophy of Jesus of Nazareth, and he excised from the Bible everything that he thought was based on supernatural beliefs or superstition or miracles. And he said, let's just stick with the moral preachments of Jesus Christ, which he endorsed. And so that became his Bible. He literally used glue and scissors to create, Jefferson's Bible. I think there's only a handful of copies of it left. But they believed that religion should be a human enterprise that's evolving, but it doesn't need state intervention any more than we need state intervention telling people what to think about morality or ethics or politics. That's not the proper role of the state. And religion should evolve and the state should evolve, but they should be kept separate. And a lot of sociologists will say the reason why America has the most dynamic, flourishing religious sector of any of the Western countries is precisely because we've kept the state out. I think it was Katha Pollitt, the Nation writer, who said she favors religious prayer in the schools because it will be sure to turn all of the kids off from religion. She's an atheist, and she's saying that's the surest way to alienate everybody from the religious cause.
Can you speak on the dichotomy between Republicans hiding behind Christianity to enact an agenda that is actually wholly antithetical to the teachings of Jesus, like whether regarding their refusal to fund food stamps, Medicaid, which overwhelmingly helps the elderly and the disabled, the child tax credit, which just as of this recording was just again voted down by Republicans, vilifying immigrants and refugees when Jesus himself was a refugee. How do you square these blatantly contradictory ideas?
Well, and of course, that's a debate within Christianity and within religion. And so I'm happy to enter into that discussion because it's so interesting. But of course, from a constitutional and secular perspective, there are people who want to use Christianity for repressive purposes. There are people who want to use Christianity for progressive humanistic purposes. There are people who want to use Judaism or Islam for authoritarian and repressive purposes, and there are people who want to use those religions for humanistic and liberal purposes, right? And that, of course, makes sense from an Enlightenment perspective because a religion is a human construct. From a secular perspective, those religions don't come from God. They are man-made, and so they can be used for corrupt purposes or humanitarian purposes. But your point is correct. I mean, we've got great progressive liberation thinkers within Christianity. I'm thinking about my friend Reverend Barber, who says that Jesus Christ was championing a philosophy of love and solidarity with the poor. And, quotes the passages everybody knows about how, it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter heaven, and so on. So that wing of Christianity, of course, would denounce the Jerry Falwell wing, which organizes itself around contempt for gay people, hatred of the LGBTQ community, the subjugation of women, the violation of women's procreative and reproductive choice, and so on. But that version of authoritarian Christianity has been central to the authoritarian dictators and strongmen all over the world. I mean, if you look at Viktor Orban, who is held up as the hero by right-wing MAGA forces and by Donald Trump, and I think he just had a slumber party a few weekends ago over at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago spread, that's all about right-wing Christianity, putting women back in their place, stripping women of reproductive freedom, bashing gay people, bashing immigrants, and so on. And there are great Christian theologians and scholars who say that's totally antithetical to who the real Jesus was. There's a great book by Gary Wills called What Jesus Meant that would really seem to take that position as well. But here's the great thing. In American constitutional democracy, we don't have to enter into doctrinal conflict on an internecine basis within particular religions. That's for the religions to fight out. I mean, the reason why you've got like the Baptist Convention and the Southern Baptist Convention, and the Methodists and the Southern Methodists, and the African Methodist, AME Church, is because they all had splits over secular political subjects like slavery and civil rights and abortion, and should gay people be allowed to be married, and the religions can slice and dice themselves a million different ways. The government doesn't have to be involved in that.
Now, eventually, the Ten Commandments case will make its way to the Supreme Court, and at any other point before the last few weeks, I would have assumed that it would just go the same way as, like you mentioned before, Stone versus Graham in 1980, which was a near identical case in Kentucky, which already adjudicated this issue.
Yes.
But after this court's immunity ruling, I legitimately don't know how this court would rule, although I can say with some certainty that there would at least be 2 votes in favor of Louisiana. So what would the argument to justify that be, given how blatantly and nakedly unconstitutional it actually is?
It depends on how far back they want to roll American constitutional discourse and understanding. I mean, they could go back to the point I was mentioning before about how the 14th Amendment, through the so-called due process incorporation process, applies the no establishment of religion principle, not just against Congress, which is what is stated textually, but then through the 14th Amendment also against the states. Somebody like Clarence Thomas doesn't like that doctrine. I think that Scalia and Rehnquist may have been skeptics of that doctrine too. So they might just go and say, well, Congress can't set up a religion or a church, but the states can. And so if the states can actually establish a church under that reading, certainly they can engage in the far lesser violation of people's civil liberty of just imposing the tenets of one particular religion in a public school classroom. So they might try to make that argument. They also could make the argument that, okay, even if the no establishment principle applies against the states, this is not an establishment because we are going to define establishment as only setting up an official church. And if Louisiana doesn't officially set up the Catholic Church as the Church of Louisiana, but just puts up 10 commandments, well, that would be okay. After all, the Supreme Court has carved out other little exceptions. There's one that affects our routine in Congress called Marsh versus Chambers, which says that Congress can have a chaplain and open our daily sessions with a prayer. And it's not because the First Amendment doesn't operate. It's simply because they say the original Congress did that and did not view it as incompatible with the First Amendment. Query whether or not that's true. And the way that those of us who are much stronger First Amendment establishment champions have tried to reconcile this is to say, well, that mini little moment of silence or meditation is one that's got to be open to people from every religious denomination, not just Christians, but Muslims and Jews and Unitarians, and but also others who will memorialize the day. I remember when I was in the state Senate in Maryland, we had the same practice, and I brought in priests, I brought in rabbis, and I brought in also musicians who thought that they had songs that they could play that would uplift and solemnize the proceedings. And so I think that makes it a little bit better. But in any event, they could carve out an exception and say that posting the 10 Commandments does not constitute an establishment or a real endorsement, especially if it's just a silent display. You can imagine something like that. But people who grew up when there was school prayer and things like 10 Commandments on the walls will tell you that it's all about sticking it to the minority groups, the people who don't agree with or don't participate in worship the same way the majority group that controls the school board does it. And there are lots of cases where Catholics are in the minority and they bring a suit against a Protestant practice, or Mormons are in the minority and they're bringing a suit against a Protestant practice or a Catholic practice, or different groups are treated like the outsider like the scapegoat. And so many of these religious impositions are really about the majority sticking it to the minority group.
Which I guess leads me to the last question here. And this is something that's reared its head quite a bit lately, that's really come into the zeitgeist. So what is the link between Christian nationalism and fascism? Because so often it feels like they're kind of one and the same as they present themselves in this country today.
Well, you know, it would be interesting to bring in some historians to discuss that connection in the 20th century. But the right-wing Catholic and Christian parties were generally very supportive of fascist movements in the last century. And in some sense, it's almost hard to disentangle them if you're looking at Franco in Spain or Mussolini in Italy. And of course, the Catholic Church has apologized for its involvement in facilitating fascism and not speaking out strongly against Hitler, whose birthday was observed in the Catholic Church in Germany, and whose birthday was announced regularly. So there's a long history of Christian anti-Semitism that definitely exploded in the last century, and anti-Semitism was one of the critical currents in fascist totalitarianism that Hannah Arendt identified in the origins of totalitarianism.
And of course, rearing its head as recently as Charlottesville, for example. Congressman, what can we look out for in the next episode of Class?
Yes, in our next session, we're going to take on a fallacy that is just ablaze all over the land, coming from the MAGA Republicans, which is that America is not a democracy, but a republic, and therefore equal protection does not cover the voting rights of the people and the one person, one vote principle. And the First Amendment and the freedom of speech do not protect the rights of students in public schools or public employees in the workplace and so on. But we're going to take this claim that we're not a democracy, we're a republic, and then all of the implications which they say follow from that distinction.
So you'll all be armed with exactly what to say the next time a Republican pushes this claim that actually we're not even a democracy, we are a republic. And of course, to watch that episode, please make sure to subscribe to this channel. The link to subscribe is right here on the screen and also in the post description, as well as the links for Democracy Summer and my upcoming book, Shameless. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Jamie Raskin, and make sure to check out Brian's book, Shameless. It's really fun.
This is Class with Jamie Raskin.
As someone who prioritizes movement and health, cachava is my favorite part of my routine. Not only does one serving provide 25 grams of protein, it's also packed with so much goodness, like 85 superfoods, nutrients, and plant-based ingredients, 6 grams of fiber, and so much more in one truly delicious shake. From my life adventures to my post-workout fuel, I rely on cachava to be my whole body meal that makes meeting my daily health goals an absolute breeze.